Yeah. All right, welcome everyone to our master class. This is a free series that we provide here at NLBP, and today is called Woo and Wealth: Simple Steps to Aligning Your Business Finances. Jennifer Pietrzak is a CPA, a fractional CFO, and financial manager, and certified public accountant, if you don't know what CPA means, with a master's in accounting and taxation. She works as a trusted business advisor to Fortune 500 companies, small businesses, and nonprofits. Her practice centers around providing fractional CFO support and CPA caliber tax advisory services. And I just want to add that she works pretty specifically with soul-aligned entrepreneurs. So that's why she is here today. She is also one of our coaches and mentors and teaches a micro-community with the same name as Woo and Wealth. And I go to it myself, and I can tell you it is amazing. We have incredible discussions around business finance. And I think that's a really important part of growing your business. When you understand the numbers, you can manage your business. You have to understand the numbers to be able, they say, if you can measure it, you can manage it. And I think that's a real important part. So Jennifer, I'm going to give the floor to you, and you can take it from here.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Hearing that that intro paragraph that one of my coaches wrote, it kind of keys up this whole discussion, because I'm going to talk to you about my journey and sprinkle in the simple steps that we alluded to. But before we get started, if you wouldn't mind putting into the chat what it is you do, simply maybe three to 5 words, or the industry, just so I have an idea of who I'm talking to. That would be great. Thank you. Intuitive animal communicator. Very cool. Leadership consulting. We have some mentors, guides, coaches. Wonderful. Vitality coach. Great. Thank you guys so much for joining in, and I hope you'll join us for another Woo and Wealth next month as well. I am Jennifer Pietrzak. I'm a certified public accountant. I have had quite a journey myself, starting in corporate and ending, well, finding myself now in my own practice, not ending. So I wanted to share my story with you, but I first wanted to, we all kind of learn differently. So I wanted to share a visual with you. I'm a pretty visual person, and I want to kind of give you a roadmap to how I aligned my business with my finances. So if everybody would, if you have a notepad, you can certainly draw this. If you want to just close your eyes and visualize it, that's fine too. But the image that's coming through for me today that aligns with my story is a triangle. I'm picturing an isosceles triangle with 3 points, and I'm going to share with you on my journey what those 3 points are. And then in the center of the triangle, I see this yin yang symbol. So I'll show you. Can you see that? That's what I drew for today. That's our journey for today. So I'm going to start off with the first point, the first simple step on my journey to aligning my practice with all of you and helping you. I have never shared this part of my story before, so there's a certain amount of vulnerability that comes with that. And this is a safe space. And what I've noticed is it's really hard for a lot of my clients, a lot of the people that I talk to dive into this discussion of finances. So without knowing who I am and where I come from, why would you share some of this very intimate information and help me, or allow me to help you track those business finances and measure where you're going, where you've been? So the first part of my journey, I've always done this. I went to school for accounting. Right out of accounting, I went into a Big 4 firm called Deloitte, and I worked sensationally hard. as most of us do, as we're, making our bones, we're learning a new skill set, new expertise. And I was extremely dedicated. I was a top performer in my field. I was frequently, working with Fortune 500 companies, as Big Four firms do. I never questioned myself. I learned from my mentors. I had a really good sense of confidence about what I was doing, even as I was learning. But the turning point for me was in all of this success and all of working with these wonderful companies, all sorts of different companies, different sizes, throughout the world, throughout the country. They sent me to India to manage their part of their practice out there. And so I had these really wonderful experiences, but when it came down to time to kind of settle down, grow some roots, I realized I wasn't licensed. And this comes as a surprise to people, that I've done so many things. I have a level of expertise that my colleagues, they don't all have resumes like mine. We all don't have resumes like anybody else in our field. That's what makes us unique. But it came time to decide, am I going to continue doing this corporate thing forever? What am I going to do? So I had to realize that I needed to get that license. That license was really important. It signifies a certain level of expertise, but also ability and knowledge and weight. It just has a weight. All of our licenses and certifications carry a weight. So I came to this point, and this was actually 5 years ago. I went through over a decade of doing some great work. And 5 years ago, I decided to get licensed, and my managing partner came into my office and said, okay, now you have your license. Now you don't need it. It's something you have to have, but it's not something that makes any bit of difference now. So keep doing what you're doing, keep working hard. And it was a turning point for me, because I looked inside and I was like, I don't know that I want to do this. I don't know that I'm serving the people that I'm called to serve. And I'm telling you this because at that point, I decided to go out on my own. I made a decision that I was going to buy a practice from a retiring CPA. It's going to be a $500,000 practice. And so I gave my notice. It was November, and gave plenty of time for them to replace me, and went into negotiations to buy this practice. And I got a gnawing in my gut that it wasn't right. This practice was built on this gentleman's, everything that this gentleman had attracted into his life, over his lifetime, over his career, the types of people that resonated with him. And something was telling me as we went through these negotiations that this wasn't for me. I had a nest egg. I wasn't prepared to not have a practice. So why am I telling you this? The first point in the triangle is honoring your story. It took me a long time. And like I said, I've never shared this version of my story. It took me a long time to realize that I needed to honor all of the pieces of my story. It creates who I am. It creates the knowledge base that I have. It's all part of the journey that created the expertise and skill level that I can provide, and the reasons why I can connect with people that I do. So point number one in aligning our businesses is honoring our story. Very closely tied to that moment where I made the decision that I was not going to buy a practice, that I had to figure out, how am I going to support myself? How am I going to grow my business? I'm going from employment to self-employment, which I know some of you have either made that decision or are going through that decision. How am I going to do that? How do I grow a business now without having it handed to me? And so the second point, the top of the triangle for me in my journey, is honoring my self-authority. Some of you are likely exposed to human design. We all have different ways of our body and our soul telling us, what's right for us. And I didn't know human design at the time that I was making that decision, but I knew that I had to honor what was feeling right to me. So that's the second point in my story of aligning my business with my finances. Honor our stories, honor our self-authority. And then the third leg of the journey for me, before we get into the more quantitative aspects, the third part was, where are my people? Who am I going to attract? So if I'm not going to take somebody's business and make it my own because he attracted people that don't resonate with me, and maybe I can't serve them in the way that they need to be served, where am I going to find my people? And I think that's a question for all business owners. How do I get more clients? How do I find more customers? How do I reach out and align my marketing with my mission? And so it took a lot of trial and error to grow my own way. I thought outside of the box. I didn't pursue other practices at that point. What I did do was contracted with some like-minded CPAs and saw how they grew their practice and helped them continue to grow their practice as I was continuing to grow mine. So I sought out mentors within my own industry. And I think that's a really important thing to do for all of us. And eventually I found my people, and my people are in this group. Natural Life Business Partnership was such a huge turning point for me, not in the way that I'm here to sell and I'm looking for clients, but in the way of surrounding myself with like-minded people, people who are in fields of energy work, who are coaches, who are healers, who resonate with me. So what I do differently now that I have built my practice is I'm not just your typical accountant. I'm not just going to stand here and put a spreadsheet in front of you and ask you to do an exercise. We will do an exercise, but it's not the kind that you might think. So really, when I meet with my clients, when I talk to them and help them interpret their business financials, I come with a sense of, the answer. We all know the answer for ourselves. We're all here to grow our businesses our own way. It's not a matter of me saying, okay, this is the way that you do it. Yes, numbers are kind of definitive. You can calculate them, you can quantify them, you can add them up and move them around, and they mean different things. But at the end of the day, those numbers are there to be read like lab work, to be read like the numbers on the scale if you track your numbers every day. It's just information. And what I do is help you interpret that information. So the yin and the yang symbol for me is really that qualitative and quantitative aspect and bringing them together. How do we read our story from our business financials? The first thing that we need to do is to track those things. We need to track our income. We need to track our expenses. We need to look at the resources that we have available and put them down on paper. How many people use QuickBooks? I'm just curious if you'll put that into the chat, or something like QuickBooks. Does anybody use a spreadsheet? Quicken, yep. Some people using spreadsheets. Yeah. So there's not one right way to do it. We're going to do what's most cost effective as we grow our business. Next question for you. How are you organized? How's your business organized? Are you an LLC? Are you a corporation? Are you a sole proprietorship? Oh, I love that. LLC taxed as an S corporation. So if you're an LLC, do you know how you're being taxed? And it's okay. I see a no out there. It's okay if you don't know. These are the questions. As we're talking through this, you can write down a list. I encourage you to write down a list of some of these questions that you may or may not have the answers to. If you prepared your tax return already, or you're planning to prepare your tax return, what form are you using? Do you know the number? I see question marks, and that's good. I'm raising these questions not to put you on the spot, but to say, these are the aspects of the system that we need to pull together, that we need to be tracking. Because if we're not tracking, if we're not clear on some of these answers, it's going to be really hard to have a good conversation to move forward your business. Is anybody using a CPA or a tax preparer? Tax preparer. Do we have bookkeepers? Or do we do it ourselves? Nice. My bookkeeper is a CPA. Awesome. So for some of you with the spreadsheet, I think that this is still going to be relevant for you. It really doesn't matter how you're tracking, but a few of the things that I'd like to point out as we talk about the qualitative and quantitative aspects of your business finances are we want to separate it into a few different items: income, expenses that are directly related to what you sell, to providing your service or what you sell, and then selling and administrative expenses. When we back out all of these expenses, we get our profit. So sometimes in the context of a financial discussion, we'll talk about, well, how much did you make last year, right? That's usually our gross sales number. The bottom line is really what you took home. That's your profit. So in the context of these questions, we want to make sure that we know we have developed a language. Sorry, I lost my my point in where I was. We want to develop a language and make sure that when we have the person that we speak to about our financial decisions and how to grow our business, that we're coming from a place of using the same language. So a lot of times what people tell me is, my accountant talks over my head, or, they're well-meaning, but they can't connect with me. They don't understand what I do. It's really important to have a discovery session with your financial advisor, with your financial manager, CPA, bookkeeper, whoever it is, and discuss what are your goals, because the numbers are just numbers. If we think about it in the context of lab results, that you might get blood work, and there's all different ranges, right? The right range, or where you are in the range, is totally individual to you, right? So what I do when I work with a client is I want to know the why. I want to know the story. I want to know what feels right as they grow their business. It's not black and white. It's not something that can be done in an hourly discussion. It's a relationship that you build over time. It's a relationship that you build with yourself to know what it is you're looking to do, what kind of impact you're looking to make. And have somebody interpret that story for you. So as an example, does everybody know how much they made last year? And I don't want you to necessarily put it into the number into the chat. You can direct message me if you want to. Ish. Not exactly yet. So I'm curious if somebody wants to expound a little bit on what it takes to know what your number is from last year. If somebody would be willing to unmute and tell me what is it that's not exactly, or what's ish about it. What I pull out of the company is different than the LLC profit. Yes. I really just need to go back and look at the CPA paperwork. I love that. I love that, because let's pull those two things together. So the CPA's paperwork that you're being given, is that something that you look at just once? Does it make any sense to you? I'm curious. It does make sense when I look at it. Great. So let's go to Camille's point. That's a really great point. What I pull out of the company is different than my LLC profit. When we look at our profit, we can do quite a few different things. It's not necessarily the bottom line is what you pull out or what your income is. The bottom line is an option to pull money out of the company for your living expenses, or to put it back and and reinvest into your company. So Camille, would you mind telling me a little bit more about your comment while I catch up on what other people are saying?
Sure. For me, I pull out a certain amount every single month. So I pay myself first. And then at the end of the year, I kind of see how the overall company did, but it also pulls out the owner's draw. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So what's left is, yeah. So I don't know until really the end, because I don't pull out any more. If we make more, it stays with the company.
Right. Right. So how do you determine the number that you're looking to pull out on a monthly basis?
I give myself a raise every year, but I pull the same amount out regardless of how my month went.
Okay.
Because in the beginning, I would like not pay myself and then pay my bills and I'd scrape by. And I learned that if I always pay myself first, that's like the minimum I have to make. But now I have staff and everything, so I have to pay them too. But I pay myself first, and even if I try not to go into debt, but if I have to, I always pay myself the same amount. It might give the, less profit at the end, but, but I don't give myself, like next year, I probably won't give myself a raise because we're paying off debt.
Okay.
So does that make sense?
Yeah. So it's based on what you need from your business.
Yeah, I mean, I could take more, but I choose not to because we're in a growth pattern right now. Does that make sense? So
yeah.
So I take the minimum of what I really need and I live comfortably on it.
Okay. Yeah. That's an example of building your business around your lifestyle, right?
Yeah.
Thank you for that. I got the number and I found the paperwork. My net income is hilarious. Would you please expound on my net income is hilarious? I have to hear this.
Yeah, so I'm looking at, this is my loss and profit statement from my CPA, and the net income at the end was $5,067.
$5,067. Okay.
So that was obviously not what the business brought in, but
Right.
after all of our expenses for the year, that was what came out as our profit. So I just find that like really interesting how different that is from the number of the, you know, the total income.
Mhm. Yeah. So what does it tell you if it's that much different? Where do you think, where did that money go?
I invested a lot last year into expanding the business, receiving business coaching, joining NLBP, working with people that I met through NLBP, things like that. So it was really the first year that I started to really, really invest.
Okay.
Versus the year before, I had only worked. I only worked and made money. I did not, other than like the costs to stay operational, I did nothing with that money and
So
just put it in savings.
did you also pay yourself this past year?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
Because I'm guessing that's what the payroll expenses are in here.
Probably. I have to go back to see what you are structured as. Are you the S Corp?
Yes.
Yes. Then the payroll is you.
Yeah.
So there's a little bit difference in how you're structured. That's why I ask how everybody's structured, because not everybody's numbers are going to look the same. Some people actually pay themselves with payroll, and some people, you know, they're a sole proprietor or a single member LLC established as a sole proprietorship. And so that bottom line number, that's the number that they have to pull their payroll out, quote unquote payroll out, their owners draw out. So there's all sorts of different scenarios. And I think that sometimes when we're having casual conversations with our friends, with other business owners, the accounting concepts can get misconstrued through those conversations. And so it's really important to know, what am I? How am I structured? And if I'm having a conversation with somebody who's structured differently, because those concepts are not going to meet eye to eye. This is where we start having conversations about, oh, my CPA told me this, but that's not what my CPA told me. And if you can bridge the language of what's happening through using the appropriate terms, that's another thing that usually what ends up happening is we have shorthand. We have different terms for different things, and they have a real meaning and they get used incorrectly sometimes. But I think, you know, the comment that my profit is hilarious is really a testament to what I'm talking about here. So when we align our finances with our business, there's a lot of emotion behind that. There's a lot of passion behind what we do and why we do what we do. And so if at the end of the day, we can feel grateful, if we can feel like we're making the impact that we're looking to make, that S corporation profit, that might be really good. But looking at one number for tax purposes is really good. But for impact wise, we might want to look at the top line number. For lifestyle wise, we might want to look at what that entity paid you. So looking at all of the pieces in conjunction is what's going to give you a full picture. And most of the time we want to look at a bottom line. We want to look at one thing. We want something to be very clear cut, and the numbers really aren't clear cut. It's the story behind what's happening, what's being said, and reading that story through those financials. Does anybody have a question? I feel like this is a good time for a question on what's on people's mind when it comes to their finances. Does anything come to mind when we talk about honoring our story, honoring our self-authority, finding our people, and then tracking our income and expenses, and the final step, interpreting what those things actually mean. Along those lines, does that make sense? That those linear steps? Are you experiencing that in your own business? Are you able to have conversations that bridge the mission with the numbers? Which piece? Which piece do we want to expand on, Meryl? Thank you. Bridging the mission with the numbers. There's a lot of ways that you can look at that. Meryl, are you, what are you doing? Are you a mindset coach, I think? Yes. So mindset coach, or it's really any type of holistic coaching activity. What I mean by connecting your mission to the numbers is knowing your impact, knowing why you're doing something, knowing who your audience is and how big your audience is. Knowing, do you want to have employees? Do you not want to have a team? Do you want to have a team? How does that look? Knowing what your lifestyle needs to benefit from that mission. Because if we just consider what we want to do in the world, without regard to ourselves, without regard to what that business endeavor needs to bring back into our own lives, some of us are well able to pursue our dreams without the pressure of bringing in an income. Some of us aren't. It all depends on what your situation is. So getting really clear on what your situation is, that can affect how we structure a projection for the future. Another way that we can align our mission with our numbers is to not only look at our past performance, but look at the trend of our past performance. Is it going in the direction that we want to go in? Are the numbers going up? Which numbers are going up? Are our sales going up? Is our debt rising because we haven't been able to bring in enough to sustain the business, let alone our lifestyle? Or are we drawing on the business too much? Does that kind of start connecting the dots for you, Meryl? It's so individual. I think the bottom line is there's no two clients that come into my office that have the same story, that have the same journey. So it's really about understanding very clearly what you want to do. Can you talk about debt? When is it appropriate to spend more money than the business is bringing in, and how is debt expense calculated? Okay, yeah. So we find debt in all different parts of our journey, our growth of our business. It could be in the beginning as startup costs, which is different than when we're deeper into our business. We're more established and we're looking to expand. But usually we see the debt when we're going through a major growth spurt. So the first thing that I usually coach my clients on when it comes to this is, what's your plan to pay it off? What are your projections for the future? You can look at this in a couple different ways. You can look at, what's this going to look like on my tax return? How much can I expense? And you can look at this from the perspective of cash flow. How quickly am I going to be able to pay it off? What's the interest rate? What are the terms? And do they align with what I'm trying to do? So it's different if you're going to take out debt to purchase a building. Then if you're taking out an SBA loan to launch your business. Those are two very different scenarios. And there's two different paths to paying off the debt. Some debt we want to pay off really quickly. Some debt is necessary to be paid off quickly. A lot of the loans that you find out there today will take a percentage of your sales right off the bat. Yep. Instead of like paying a monthly payment. Those are usually the ones that you find through your point of sale providers. When is it appropriate to spend more money? Again, whenever we use words like appropriate, this is why I come back to the story in your own journey. And that's why I think it's so important, because appropriate means something different to everybody. If you're looking at it from a credit bureau perspective, that's a different answer than from the person who is taking out the debt. You have to consider the seasonality of your business. If it's just, you know, in your slow time, you're going to need a line of credit versus, you know, this is going to be more of a long-term debt that's going to place a weight or a burden on the business for several years. It's appropriate is in the eye of the beholder, really.
Your answer was good on how you're planning on paying it off. I think that's very important. I hear the question a lot, and I know most people when they're starting a business always try to stay within the realm. I don't know, like within the range of what they're bringing in, right? They don't spend more than they're bringing in. But I think for everyone that's growing, there is a point where you have to spend to grow or scale to that next level, depending on what your business is, right?
Yeah.
There was a point that we reached that there was no way to grow without taking out a loan.
Right.
And we did a very low interest SBA loan.
Yeah.
Right. And that's
low interest is really what you're looking for, because the interest expense is the thing that you're going to be able to quote expense.
Yeah.
In your P&L and for tax purposes.
Mm-hmm.
But I think something else that you said that was really important is, you know, consider reasonably how quickly you can pay it off, and know that that's just a projection. Warren Buffett has a quote, I'm going to massacre it, but it's something to the effect that the projection really reflects the person who's making the projection, not what reality is going to look like. So if you have, it's all about how realistic we're going to be about this. If we have recurring income every month, every year, and it's, you know, pretty much a sure thing. We all lose clients and things shift at times, but if there's recurring income, that's a really good indicator of how quickly you'll be able to pay off the loan, as opposed to just saying, yeah, I hope to make 100,000 this year. I'm just starting my business. Those are two different data points. One is a goal and the other is based on what's actually flowing in. So I think that's really important to consider when you're thinking about debt. I think the other thing is to consider, especially if you are a sole proprietor, is your proportion of debt to what you qualify for. So if you are maxed out on every credit card, and I do see this with clients from time to time, they'll get into an expansion mode and they'll say, oh, I have this available credit. I'm not necessarily going to go out for a loan or a grant. A grant is a really great way to get a cash infusion without the terms of a loan. But credit cards are usually, I'm not going to say a poor choice, but they have the highest interest rate and they do affect your credit rating pretty quickly. I felt I had to spend to get training and community as I transitioned from therapy to coaching spiritual guidance. Absolutely. Do you want to say more about that, Safriana?
Yeah, I mean, that was why my business expenses were so high this last year, reflecting back. And I'm fortunate that I didn't have any business debt, but I definitely had personal debt because I was investing more of the money instead of paying myself. So in the end, like, it's still kind of business debt in a way.
Right. It's the training and the professional development, I would call it.
Mm-hmm.
So it is connected to your business.
Yeah.
So you're saying that you paid that personally in lieu of getting paid through the business? Is that what you said?
I'm like, instead of paying myself a higher amount to go towards life expenses, I put more of the money coming in from the business directly back into the business. So I had less to pay myself.
Yeah, so that's a great example of budget mindset. So sometimes, you know, when business is going really good, we want to expand really, really quickly. We will take on more, whether it be the coaching or the community or networking, expenses can get really, really high very, very quickly, especially in the beginning. All of those things can expand, but if we don't consider, well, where is the money coming from? If it's not coming from increased sales right away, it's either going to go into some form of debt, or it has to come out of what we pay ourselves. And so I think it's really wise if you really are very clear on, these are the next goals for my business. This is what I'm looking to achieve in this next year. And by investing in yourself, you can get to that next level. You can get to that next step. Well, if you do it consciously and know that that money is going to come from somewhere, if you don't generate it, that's the part of the projection. We can hope and give our best guess as to what we think sales will do over the next short period. But if it doesn't happen, what's our plan B? And that's the biggest thing for me when it comes to debt, is not so much, you know, where is the debt or how much is the debt, but what's my plan to pay it off? Gina says, I've heavily invested in myself and I don't pay myself, but I move money from one account to another, depending on where I am and which account has the best overdraft. Okay. Does anybody else hear this? Like, I hear this all the time, the moving the money around to kind of make ends meet. Is that, Gina, I'm going to invite you to unmute if you want to, but you don't have to.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I think what I haven't done is treated it really like a proper business. I've got a separate bank account, so as much as possible, as much as I can, you know, my business expenses go out of that one and any monies go into that one. But because I've not got, at the moment, I actually, it's interesting, this has come up this week, but at the beginning of last week, I sort of came to the realization that my business is actually making any money at the moment, and it's costing me more than it's making. So therefore, my personal account's got a big overdraft. So rather than, and my business account's only got a tiny one. So it's more of switching things around, you know, robbing Peter to pay Paul type of thing a lot, rather than giving myself maybe a business loan and then paying myself back, or, you know, being that sort of strategic. It's a bit laissez-faire, really.
Yeah, and that's okay. You know, depending on how you're structured, it's okay to have that level of flexibility. There are certain structures that do not allow for that level of flexibility. The corporations and the S corps are the ones where we got to be a little bit more mindful about moving.
Yeah, I'm a sole trader, so.
I'm sorry?
I'm a sole trader.
Yeah, so it's much more flexible. And there's a boundary there. And it's one that, like, if you come back to the energetics and the spiritual alignment with what you're there to do as a business person versus in your personal life, you may find that that boundary has been lost when we start moving the accounts around in that manner. That has been my experience with myself and my clients. I'm not saying that it's your experience.
No, I think that's fair to say.
But, you know, that's usually what it's so interesting how the money flows through all of the different accounts and categories it really does tell the story of what's going on the inside. It's hard to explain. It's just something that I've learned over the 20 years that I've been doing what I've been doing. But, you know, it's a kind of a pillar to keep those two things separate. And when they aren't being made separate anymore, that's a great opportunity to reevaluate what's happening. What do I need? What needs to change? Does the business model need to change? Do I need to go for a loan? Do I need an investor? Do I need a partner? There's so many creative opportunities to address that particular circumstance.
Yeah, I just need to make some more sales.
And that's usually what we all want to do, right?
Thank you.
You're welcome. 10 minutes to go. Thank you, Camille. All right, so we kind of did questions. Does anybody else have a burning desire before I recap to ask a question? It's hard to make this topic relatable to everybody because everybody's so individual and there's so many different ways that you can run your business. But I think the pillars are there. You know, if we honor our story, if we honor our self-authority, if we find the right people, energetically, our life is going to be happier, and our business, which is an extension of ourselves, is going to grow from there. And I find I emphasize that so much because when clients come to me and they're so in the logic brain asking questions, it's great. But the clients that come to me with the inner work already on its way, I'm not going to say completed because we always are doing our inner work. We're always on a journey. But when you have that inner work really clear and solid, and then you go to your advisor to have a conversation about, okay, what are the numbers showing? Is there chaos? Is there debt all over the place? Is there money moving around in all different places? Are the expenses, you know, starting to grow and eat up all of those profits? All of those questions tell the story. They help you interpret what's going on in your business so that you can make different decisions. Sometimes better decisions, sometimes not. But that's the beauty of having the tracking and the accounting. It's boring, it's back office, we don't want to do it. But at the end of the day, data is what's going to help you understand what's going on so that you can make the decisions that you need to make for a better tomorrow. And that's really the message. Those are the points. Track and interpret.
Awesome. Thank you, Jennifer, so much for being our mentor and our master teacher today. If anyone, Jennifer, why don't you put your information in the chat?
Sure.
So people could get in touch with you. For anyone that's on this line, Jennifer also runs our micro community, also called Woo and Wealth, all about our business finances. And by being a paid member of NLBP, it opens up her micro community. She donates her time and talent to work with our members once a month for that. So that's really amazing. And if you have joined today, which all of you probably went through our registration process, you are registered for all of our masterclass series, and it is exactly the same time every single month. It's the fourth Thursday at 1 p.m. Next month, we are talking about using automation to make your life easier, and Paul Talman, who's the Chief Online Strategist at Digital Maestro, will be leading that. So if you've registered, you're already registered for that one, but you can also do that. And hopefully we can answer any questions. Follow us in the Global Collaborative, which is our free Facebook group. hold on, I'll put that link in the chat. So if you have any follow-up questions after this, we can tag Jennifer and she can help you and answer all of them. So that's probably a great way to do it too. And
Absolutely.
thank you, Jennifer, again for being a part of this. And
Thank you for having me.
I appreciate that.
Absolutely. I look forward to the next Woo and Well.
Yes. Excellent, thank you. All right, everyone.